Hey everyone, Josh here from Australia. Welcome back to Braver by the Day. And this is the first Encore episode. Essentially every 20 episodes or so I'm going to do a small recap of the previous 20 episodes, share some of the great feedback, some of my guests inspired by quotations, which you'll find in the show notes for every episode where I have a guest, where I dig out an original quote about what they had to say during their interview. So those are pretty special. I'm also going to share a few successes and failures of my own from the first 20 episodes. So a show about habit change, I probably need to recognize some of the things that haven't worked and change those. I'm also going to be introducing a few new ideas that I might look at going forward. So just before we get started today's episode is co-sponsored by Audible, which I'm really stoked about. That's happened in the last 20 episodes. Audible's my favorite learning resource. So you can go to audibletrial.com/Australia and pick up The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, 100% free. It's a 30-day trial on Audible, but you don't pay anything. You get the book. And if you don't stay with Audible after the 30 days, you get to basically keep the book anyway. Audible plays on all kinds of devices. So The Power of Habit was actually the book I've been asked about the most in the last 20 episodes too, so I thought that's the one I'd recommend today. So we'll kick into today because I want to keep these Encore episodes short. If you're wondering where to get the Encore episodes, braverbytheday.com/Encore1. These will happen every 20 to 25 episodes, as I said before, so if you're new to the show, these are probably helpful episodes because you'll get to know a few of the guests that I've had over the previous 20 episodes and get to hear some of their inspired by quotations. So before we get into the quotations, I might just quickly go through some of the successes and failures I've had myself and the changes I'm going to bring to the show because obviously, as I said, I want to optimize the show to be as powerful for the listener as I can. That's all part of developing a healthy habit in the context of the show itself. So I'll start with a few of the failures. These became pretty evident early on. One was that I was releasing 5 episodes every second Monday, which was a lot to put out at once. It actually worked against the iTunes store algorithm a little bit as well, from what I can understand, as the mobile app for the iTunes podcast actually only downloads the most recent episode normally when you're subscribed to the show. So I was putting up a lot of episodes, but it might have been only number 5 and number 10 that people could see. So they weren't 100% familiar with the name of the guest or the topic I was talking about. The listener might not have wanted to go back through those episodes, so that was a bit of a failure. I'll speak to how I'm changing that up soon. The other big failure was probably just getting really, really sick over the last 8 or 9 weeks while the show's been out. I also got very distracted, and I was about 2 to 3 weeks ahead on interviews and all that sort of stuff. I've actually fallen behind a little bit, and I'm not as far ahead as what I'd like. Finally starting to feel better, so thanks for all the people that have reached out and said, hey, I hope you get better and I hope you feel better. That was muchly appreciated. And that moves on to a few of the successes. I have had a pretty rough 8 or 9 weeks health-wise, but I did make the iTunes New and Noteworthy store in both Australia and the US, and I think in Canada and UK under subcategories of health and nutrition. So thank you guys all so much. If you've supported the show or left a rating in iTunes, all those things help. But particularly in the last 8 weeks as the show was new, that actually helped me get into New and Noteworthy, which is really important as a new podcast to build your audience. The fact that I have an audience is probably the other thing that's really, really awesome. Thank you to everyone once again who has listened, for the feedback, for the downloads, everything, for sharing the show with a mate if you've done that, or a friend or a family member. I have been getting great feedback. And I think the other thing that's been maybe the most gratifying for me was I was a little bit worried that I was going against convention for what most podcasting experts say you should do when starting a new show, and that's to be very, very narrow in focus. I've just been focusing on the idea of bravery and interesting stories and persistence and grit, and I was a little worried to begin with that maybe that was too broad, but everyone seems to like the fact that my guests all have positive stories of change and achievement and persistence. So I have kind of traversed a number of topic areas, from creativity to health to book reviews and a number of other things. So thank you everyone for being so accepting of that. I really didn't want to just start another show where it was so narrowly niched down that if I got bored of the idea 6 months from now, I was locked into this narrow concept just because the podcasting experts, who I do follow, have said that generally you need to start a very niche show. Because from my own research, it actually seemed as though people with a broader concept that they can move slightly outside of were always the people with the more successful shows. So I just decided to start with that intention as opposed to go that way in the future. So thank you for embracing that as a listener. There are a few changes that I am going to be looking at implementing. One of those changes is the fact that I'm hoping to secure more international guests from more different countries. The shows so far have either been myself as a monologue, myself joined by someone from Australia, or guests from the US and Canada. So I'm hoping to get people with great stories and inspirational stories of change and habit change, whether it's health or fitness or creativity, or authors and academics, social scientists particularly is something I wanted to try to bring onto the show in the future because it's probably my main field of interest and reading and study outside of music. So that's going to be a focus for the future. So, and hopefully I can bring them in from all different countries. So we get a little bit of insight into different parts of the world and the way people think in different countries. I think that will be interesting as a listener, and it'll be super interesting for me as the host of the show. So just locking down on one thing to do with the topics. So I have been having maybe 1 to 2 health or fitness related episodes per 5 episodes. They are by far the most popular. So I think it's just a general thing, and it's why I've embraced that particular element of the show, that creating a positive change in your life can often happen most quickly and most powerfully, I guess, for lack of a better word, by starting with your own physical vessel, the body. So I'm going to definitely stick with 2 episodes per 5, and it could go up to 3. There will be a consistent amount of health and fitness related episodes. So if you are part of the audience for that reason, I'll be delivering a constant stream of information from both my own experience, which I'm going to have to dive back into fitness since I've been sick for 8 or 9 weeks now. So that'll be an experience in its own right, and also from my expert guests. So if that's why you've joined the show, thank you. And I hope you're enjoying the other things that we talk about. Next is the fact that I'm not actually going to be reducing the number of episodes at all, but you probably have noticed in the last 5 episodes that I did move away from the 5 episodes every second Monday. Essentially, I'm going to be still releasing 10 episodes a month, but they're actually going to be spread out over the month evenly. So one week there might be 3 and then 2 and then 3 and then 2, or it'll depend on the schedules of guests, particularly because I'm looking to go more international. So there'll be more time zone jumping and more schedule clashes as I try to bring more and more people onto the show from around the world. So there will still be the 10 episodes. And I think overall it's probably going to be better for everyone to not have 5 episodes to download in one day if you are into the show. You can just check in every second or third day, and they'll be downloading automatically if you are using the iTunes podcast app, which I know is not the most technologically advanced app and it's probably not the best functionally, but it is where most of the audience is. So if you are using that app, then you'll only be getting 1 new episode every couple of days. So next is the fact that I'm going to have a book discussion and roundtable episode every once in a while, where I'm going to try and get as many people as I can either onto Google Plus Hangouts on Air, if I can work that out, or a group Skype call. And we'll kind of just roundtable and talk about a different book each time, because if you haven't noticed, I'm a bit of a book obsessive. So between Audible and physical books outside of music and listening to podcasts, it's pretty much all that I do really, other than work, is consume books and non-fiction predominantly. But I do also want to talk fiction books at some point just to keep things fresh. So, and if those book club episodes start to go really well and we get good feedback for those and there's a big community around those particular episodes, hopefully I might actually be able to get the author on to talk to us in the future. So that should be pretty cool. So they're the successes and failures and some of the changes that I have planned. The changes that I'm talking about can probably just be viewed as tweaks more than anything, trying to give the strongest show to the listener and make it as easy on myself to keep up that amount of content, because one thing maybe more than anything else is I realized that the schedule and the release schedule and the number of episodes and the amount of content that I was trying to put out there was manageable when I was fully fit 10 weeks ago, but being very much not fit and being very sick, it made it incredibly hard to keep up that promise to get that amount of content out. It all worked out and I got great results, so thank you again. I really need to keep in mind that I need to keep tweaking my own show, my own processes and my own habits around the show itself to keep that manageable for myself and to deliver a constantly good product for you guys to listen to and take away and actually make positive impact in your life. So it's not just a waste of time for you guys to sit here and listen. So without going on too much longer, I'm going to just jump into maybe 4 or 5 quotes from my overseas guests that I've had in the last 20 episodes. So these are just inspired by quotations that I actually dig out and maybe rework a little bit out of each episode. And I think that they're original and they're insightful and they had an impact on me. And when I look back at the show notes, I think it's the one thing in there that people can maybe just take away quickly if they don't have time to read through all the notes. Hopefully you guys as the listener get as much out of the inspired by quotations as I do when I put them together. So I'll just run through them quickly. The first quotation is from Sam Lamelli from episode 20, and that's to align yourself with the right people, the type of people who genuinely want you to succeed and will help you to get there. So Sam runs his own podcast in relation to special guests that have lost an extreme amount of weight, so any major habit change in life is that much easier with the right people around you. So the next quote is from Carrie Cole, a New York City-based vocal coach. She has a lot of great stories of working with entertainers that have a lot of stage fright and all those sorts of things. Carrie's inspired by quotation goes as follows. As creative people are more aware of their internal world, it's important to start there when helping them become more confident and face their fears. So that's a really good one. And me as a part-time musician, that's really pertinent to me because just when you think you're fully confident with a song or whatever you're creating, you can get gripped with fear. And you need to start internally and work out maybe where that's coming from. Because in the physical world, you know you can play the song or you know you can perform. So the next quotation is from Pete Lamb, who is a retired fire chief from Massachusetts in the USA, from episode 16. He does refer just to firefighters, but I think this is just such a great quote that I couldn't ignore it. Firefighters care deeply about their fellow man. Above all else, it's the thing I'm most proud of. Why I also chose that, I think that episode so far is the one that I'm most proud of. I just sat there in awe of Pete's stories, so I was pretty floored by that whole episode. So go back and listen to that one if you haven't listened to any of the first 20. Episode 16 with Pete Lamb. The next quote is from a local basketball coach who actually won an Australian National Championship last year, Brad Chalmers, episode 12. Brad's a cool guy, as you'll realise when you listen to that episode. And his quote goes as follows. Champions show up, they do the work, and they always push for that extra 5%, which I think in any kind of habit change or behavioural change is really important to keep pushing and keep refining. And if you're going to put yourself into something, go all in. And finally, the last quotation for today is from Bob Baker. The reason I left this one for last is because Bob was my original online mentor, I guess. I got into this entire world of the internet and social media and online marketing and everything else that I do in my day job and online and podcasting and all that stuff from discovering one particular book by Bob back in the day. So the Guerrilla Music Marketing Handbook. Bob joined me in episode 10. And his quote, which is somewhat reminiscent of a quote by Magic Johnson, of all people, is sometimes you have to do the things you don't want to do while you're building the thing that you do want to do. So I think that one's a really great one to finish up on. Sometimes you have to do the things you don't want to do while you're building the things you do want to do. So whether that's creating a song or a book or losing weight or refining your relationship with your partner or your family or whatever it happens to be, or just trying to kick a bad habit, smoking or drinking or anything like that, you really have to go through some pain to get the gains. So that'll probably do for today. Thank you for joining me for the first Encore episode of Braver by the Day. For today's show notes, braverbytheday.com/encore1. And just a reminder, if you are enjoying the show and you wanted to help the show and get yourself a 100% free book from Audible, go to audibletrial.com/Australia and check out The Power of Habit. That's the book I've had the most people ask me about in the last 20 episodes. So enjoy that one. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully I'll get to know you guys even better over the next 20 episodes. So see you soon. Josh here from Australia. I'll see you in episode 21.